Today's lesson is the halo effect. Why first impressions can be misleading. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And today, Mike and myself are going to continue talking about the halo effect. It's all about first impressions. And if you make a good first impression, the person who you made that impression to will probably think you're a generally good character, a good person, and they probably won't see your flaws so much. So I guess that sort of attests to the importance of making a good first impression. We gave you the example of Wendy. She's dressed stylishly. She has a confident smile, so you probably think she's smart and she's kind and popular, and you don't really look at her other traits. She might have some flaws like we all do, but you kind of overlook them because of that halo effect.
Exactly right. So someone who seems so well put together, handsome, charming, that kind of thing, you might assume, well, they must also be successful and intelligent and honest and all that. And it's actually been proven. That was a very interesting bit of research that we saw there by Edward Thorndike, who was the psychologist who came up with this. They asked officers in the army to judge their soldiers, the soldiers who served under them, on some different attributes. And when the soldiers had good scores in one category, the officers would often assume that they would have good scores in all the categories. And in the same way, if they had low scores, if that soldier was a little lazy or a little sloppy, they might also assume that they weren't very smart, they wouldn't be good leaders, they couldn't become officers in the future, even if they turned out to actually be very smart and could be good leaders who just didn't dress very well. And the really interesting part for me was that once it was proven that their impressions were wrong, these officers still had trouble changing their minds. So once you make up your mind about someone based on very little information, it can be your judgment of that for a very long time, even if there is different evidence that comes to light later on. So we learned that our brains like efficiency. They like things to be consistent. We kind of like putting people in categories. It just makes it easier to deal with all the different people we meet and come across in our lives, even if it can lead us to very, very incorrect judgments and impressions. Let's find out more about this fascinating topic in our article, starting with the next paragraph.
The halo effect pops up everywhere. In school, a popular student might get better treatment from teachers than a shy student, simply because they stand out more. In advertising, companies use celebrities to promote products because people often transfer the celebrity's positive image to what they're selling, leading to more sales. Another example comes from social media, where a single viral post can make someone seem like an expert, even if they're not. The halo effect can even influence how parents judge their own children.
大家好，第一部分介绍片语 pop up， 它的意思是突然出现或是不经意冒出来。例如 An ad popped up on my computer screen， 一则广告突然出现在我的电脑萤幕上。或者 Opportunities can pop up anytime, so it's important to stay open to new possibilities. 机会可能会在任何时间突然出现，所以对新可能性保持开放是很重要的。
Okay, so where can you see the halo effect? Well, the halo effect pops up everywhere. Here to pop up just means to appear suddenly, like advertisements often pop up on your screen as you're trying to read something on your phone, and then this advertisement pops up and you can't get rid of it. I don't want to look at this. I want to read the article. Where's the X? Let's erase this sort of thing. But in this particular case, the halo effect occurs or happens everywhere. For example, in school, a popular student might get better treatment from teachers than a shy student simply because they stand out more. Okay, so when I was in school, of course, I was kind of introverted. I was kind of shy. So, of course, the louder kids, the more obnoxious kids, seem to get more attention from the teachers because they stand out more. If you stand out, that means you're more noticeable. You're not hidden in some way. You're actually obviously very obvious to everybody else. You might stand out more, for example, if you wear wild clothes. I'm sure you've experienced this, Mike, because, we're foreigners in Taipei. We often stand out because we're the only foreigners around in certain situations, which could happen with anybody if they go to a culture outside of their own. But in this particular case, yeah, these popular students will stand out more, so the teachers will naturally like them more.
In advertising, it says, companies use celebrities to promote products because people often transfer the celebrity's positive image to what they're selling, leading to more sales. This is one of the big reasons why, yes, if there's a famous celebrity and they are seen using a product or telling us to buy a product, a lot of people will. Celebrities being famous people. If you're a famous person, if you're well-known, if you're popular, or at least well-known in the public eye, then you are a celebrity. We often might put a different sort of life in front of that, a sports celebrity, a music celebrity, a movie and television celebrity. But celebrity is good enough because these are just really famous people, and they're used to promote or to advertise products because people, that's us, the consumer, we often transfer the celebrity's positive image to what they're selling. Tom Hanks seems like a nice guy in the movies, so if he's telling me to drink this kind of soda or eat at this restaurant or whatever, I will, because he wouldn't lie to me. He seems like such a nice guy. And in the same way that when that celebrity gets in trouble in their personal life, those companies often run away from that person and cut all their ties, end all their contracts with that celebrity because their bad behavior, their bad actions that have recently been in the news could transfer, sort of be moved over to the product as well. I'm not going to buy that because they pay that person and I found out he's cheating on his wife or something like that. So they will transfer either their good public impression or their negative public impression to the product that they're selling, that the company is trying to get us to buy. And this leads to more sales if it works well, which is why, of course, celebrities are paid millions of dollars to stand in front of a camera, hold something up and say, buy this, it's good.
Yes, celebrity endorsements actually work for a lot of things. Another example comes from social media, where a single viral post can make someone seem like an expert even if they're not. So, of course, every once in a while we come across a very popular post on the internet, on social media, or whatever. Lots of people see it. It gets millions of likes, so we just assume, hey, this person must be an expert because they got so many likes for that post there. If something is on the internet and it becomes very popular on social media, we say it's viral, or we could say it's gone viral. It's everywhere. Everybody's seen it. It's very popular.
Yeah, celebrity complaining about a bad reaction to a vaccine that they might have had and can suddenly start telling us that all vaccines are dangerous or something like that. We saw this during COVID, even though they have no background in science or medicine or viruses or anything like that. But because they're famous and because they presented a very compelling and sort of emotional video, then we can think that, oh, they must know what they're talking about because look at them and they're so famous and that kind of thing. The halo effect can even influence how parents judge their own children. So that kid who's caught stealing cookies at a young age, the parents might think they're dishonest. I have to keep an eye on that kid. They were caught stealing something a long time ago, and so of course they must be dishonest. We must be sure to make sure that they're always telling the truth because they have a history of lying, even though that history is based on one incident that happened a long time ago. So even the people who you know quite well, even your own children, can be affected by this halo effect based on what they did and how we interpret that.
Indeed. So, yeah, watch out if you're a parent. Of course, if your child does something, don't judge them so quickly because you might have to give them a second chance later on. Just like my mother, she should have given me a second chance, but she always thought that I was really clumsy just because I fell that one time. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Here comes the second part.
We're all susceptible to the halo effect, but there are ways to lessen its influence. Before we form an opinion about someone or something, it's important to stop and question ourselves. Is Wendy really kind or just stylish? Does that influencer actually know what they're talking about? Does that celebrity really even use that product? By questioning our first impressions, we can reduce possible bias.
第二部分看到动词 lessen 表示减轻、减少或是降低。例如 Environmentalists urge governments around the world to lessen the use of fossil fuels. 环保人士呼吁全球各地的政府减少化石燃料的使用。或是 Sarah's pain lessened after she took the medicine. Sarah 服药后疼痛减轻了。下一个看到单字 influencer， 它是名词，它的意思是网红或是具影响力的人。例如 For a new generation of journalists, bloggers, and online influencers, social media has helped them draw attention to their work. 对于新一代的记者、部落客和网红来说，社群媒体有助于吸引公众对其作品的关注。也可以说 Being a social media influencer requires consistency and creativity. 成为社群媒体网红需要稳定性和创造力。继续介绍名词 bias， 表示偏见、偏心或是偏好。可以说 Omar's bias towards certain foods made it difficult for him to try new dishes. Omar 对某些食物的偏好使他很难尝试新菜肴。又或者说 Humans have a number of biases which affect how we think and behave. 人类有许多偏见，这些偏见影响着我们的思考和行为。
Okay, here in the second part it says, we're all susceptible to the halo effect, but there are ways to lessen its influence. Okay, here we've got the word susceptible. That's kind of a long word here. It just means you're likely to be influenced or harmed by something. It could happen to you. So yes, indeed, we could all be affected by the halo effect. We might think, oh, that doesn't happen to me. I don't judge people by their appearance, okay? I don't judge a book by its cover. I'm very fair. I'm very objective. But no, we're all susceptible to the halo effect. We're all affected by it. We probably do this all the time. We give priority to people who are attractive, especially if they're an attractive female or a powerful man.
Exactly right. We're all humans and our brains all work in similar ways. And yes, one of the weaknesses of our brain is that the halo effect can be very believable or convincing to people. But as the article says, there are ways to lessen or reduce its influence. Being aware of the halo effect will help you sort of monitor your thoughts and your opinions and your judgments of people. You know, you meet someone and they seem nice, and then you go, they must be, oh, wait a minute. Just because that person looked nice and seemed friendly, I shouldn't assume that they're great in all the other areas of life. So be aware of it, and then you can reduce the influence. It'll be harder for you to fall into this trap. It says, before we form an opinion about someone or something, it's important to stop and question ourselves, right? Look at your own behavior when you're making these judgments, because you're making the judgment. No one is forcing you to think this way about a person. You're doing it to yourself. So think about, why am I thinking this person is good or bad, as the case may be? As it says, is Wendy, that fictitious person we met in the first day of our article, is Wendy really kind? You know, I seem to like her. She seemed nice. She was attractive and well put together. Is she really kind or just stylish, right? So she's definitely stylish, but does that mean she's a kind and nice person, or am I just judging her based on the quality of her clothing? Does that influencer actually know what they're talking about? They may make a compelling case, this influencer, this internet personality who has a lot of followers on TikTok or Instagram, seems to know what they're talking about, but do they really know what they're talking about? What education, what background do they have in this topic that they seem to be an expert in? Or are they just making it up or getting their information from other not trustworthy sources, right? If a doctor tells you something about your health, you might want to believe them. But if a celebrity says, I did my own research on the internet, and you happen to like that celebrity, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're suddenly as trustworthy as a doctor or a scientist. Does that celebrity really even use that product? That's exactly what Roger was saying. I know some celebrities say, I only advertise the product if I actually use it. But many of them might just say, I only advertise the product if I get enough money. Do they really use that product? If they tell you that it's going to transform your life like it transformed theirs, did they actually use the product, or are they just doing their job as being a celebrity spokesperson?
Indeed, and they might just use it once and say they actually use the product, even though they probably never use it again. But that's, of course, something you need to investigate yourself. So yeah, check out other videos by those influencers and find out if they're legitimate, find out if they do know what they're talking about. And of course, if we question our first impressions, we can reduce possible bias. Bias here just means you have some sort of subjective opinion about something. It's your own opinion. It's not objective. It's not based on general knowledge. It's just based on your own feelings and your own knowledge. So yeah, we're all biased in certain areas about certain things, and we need to step back and look at ourselves and think, hey, am I being objective here or am I being biased? Okay, that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson for today. Here comes the third and final part.
In conclusion, to avoid being misled by the halo effect, we must remain alert and thoughtful when making judgments. If we strive to base our judgments on merit instead of appearance, we'll treat others more fairly, and hopefully they'll do the same for us.
第三部分介绍 In conclusion 这个片语指的是简而言之或是总之。举例来说 In conclusion, regular exercise greatly benefits your mental health. 总而言之，规律运动对心理健康非常有益。下一个看到 thoughtful 这个形容词表示考虑周到的或是深思熟虑的。可以说 A thoughtful gift is often treasured more than an expensive one. 一份考虑周到的礼物往往比昂贵的礼物更受珍惜。最后一个例子 Julia always takes a thoughtful approach when making an important decision. Julia 在做重大决定时总是深思熟虑。最后看到名词 merit 它的意思是价值或是功绩。例如 Your ideas have a lot of merit, but you need to put them into practice. 你的想法有很多可取之处，但你需要实践它。
All right, back to our article. So we're wrapping things up, and that all makes sense because the next sentence says, in conclusion, to avoid being misled by the halo effect, we must remain alert and thoughtful when making judgments. That's a good way to summarize or to conclude our article, to kind of wrap it up with our best advice about this halo effect and how it can affect your behavior and your judgment. Stay alert, remain alert, be aware, in other words, of the halo effect and how it can affect how you think of things and how you judge things, and be thoughtful when making judgments. Don't jump to conclusions. Don't make rush judgments or quick judgments. Be thoughtful. Think about what you're thinking. In other words, think about your impressions. Think about why you feel a certain way about a person, especially when you don't know that person very well, and sort of question yourself and say, do I have this positive impression about their whole character based on just a few qualities that I've seen, and I'm filling in a lot of the blanks with other stuff that really may not be true.
Right, so you have to be thoughtful. You need to think about things thoroughly. Thoughtful could also be what you say if somebody gives you a gift that you like. Oh, how thoughtful. I was very surprised that you actually know that I like that sort of thing. How thoughtful of you. And if we strive to base our judgments on merit instead of appearance, we'll treat others more fairly, and hopefully they'll do the same for us. So we need to strive to be objective here. To strive to be a certain way just means to have this tendency, to have this practice, to remind yourself constantly that you need to be like this. So you need to strive forward. You need to continue to work forward. You need to progress. And yes, indeed, you just need to remember to base your judgments on merit and not on appearance. Okay, merit just refers to your qualifications. Are you really qualified, or are you just pretty on the outside, all talk and no do, as we sometimes say? Yes, your judgments should be based on merit and not on appearance, and that's, of course, is very hard to do because people naturally like more attractive people.
All right, so that's it for our very interesting two-day article about the halo effect. Let's go over to Hanny one more time, and then we'll be back with our discussion starter question.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第一部分以及第二部分都有用到 influence 这个字，它可以当动词来表达影响、左右，也可以当名词去表达影响或影响力。那么文中还有用到 influencer， 则表示网红或者是具有影响力的人。好，那我们这边是要介绍 influence 的字首字根。首先看到 flu flu， 同学们也许会想到流感，不过它当字根则有 flow 流动的意思。在一些单字里面，它 它可能会拼成 FLUC、FLUV 或者是 FLUX 等等。那在 influence 这个字当中，它的字首 IN 表示进入，flew 表示流动， ENCE 是名词字尾，我们就可以用流进里面而产生了作用影响去联想到 influence 它有影响的意思。我们顺便补充几个有这一类字根的单字。第一个是 fluent， 它的字根 flew 表示流动， ENT 是形容词字尾，合在一起fluent 就表示流利的、流畅的。那把字尾 ENT 改成了名词字尾 ENCY， 会变成名词 fluency， 那就表示流畅或流利度。第二个补充的是 affluent， 它的字首 AF 是来自 AD， 表示朝向，字根 flew 表示流动， ENT 是形容词字尾。那同学们可以用朝向某个地方流动，不断的流向某处，去联想到 affluent， 它是形容富裕的、富足的，意思会跟 rich 或是 wealthy 差不多。第三个补充的是 confluence， 它的字首 CON 表示一起，flew 表示流动， ENCE 是名词字尾。那一起流动到某个地方，应该可以联想到 confluence， 它有汇流处或是汇合、聚集的意思。课文第三部分最后提到，如果我们努力根据价值而非外表来做判断，就能更公平地对待他人，并希望他们也能如此对待我们。文中是用 base our judgments on merit 来表达根据价值来做判断。那片语动词 base on 或者是 base upon 是表达以什么为根据基础， base A on B 或是 base A upon B 是表达A 以 B 为基础， A 根据 B 而来。那它可以表达出根据某些讯息而形成了某种想法或决策等等。被动用法则是 A be based on B 或者是 A be based upon B 来表达。举例来说， His opinion is based on false information， 他的看法是基于错误的资讯。好，一个延伸学习是 base 它也有以什么作为主要地点、基地的意思，那可以用 base oneself in 加上地点。举例来说， They're going to base themselves in London and make trips from there。 他们将以伦敦为主要地点，以伦敦为据点来安排旅游行程。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Celebrity. A large crowd of fans was waiting outside the theater to see the celebrity arrive. Lesson.The doctor gave Oscar some medicine that helped to lessen the pain in his back. Bias. Bias in media can shape public opinion and influence the way people see important issues. Thoughtful. Everyone in the class found Olivia's essay to be thoughtful and full of strong arguments. Strive. It's clear that Audrey always strives for excellence in everything she does. Merit.Winston claims that he got his new job based purely on merit, not his friendship with the company's owner.
Discussion Starter starts now!
And that discussion starter question we have for you guys is, of course, about the halo effect and how it may have affected you in your past. It says, do you think that you have ever been misled by the halo effect? Why or why not?
Well, I'm a completely objective person. I'm totally fair. I'm not biased at all. So no, I don't think that I've ever been affected by the halo effect, given that, like I said, I'm totally intelligent. I pretty much know everything about everybody, and I know not to judge people by their appearances. Okay, of course, I'm just kidding there. Of course, I don't think anybody is free of the halo effect. How about you, Mike?
Yes, I think I was misled by the halo effect when I lent some money to a guy who was good friends with my good friend. I think it tricked me because I like my good friend, and this guy seemed to be good friends with my good friend, so he must be a nice guy too. Well, it turns out he wasn't, and I never got the money paid back, so there you go.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I am Mike.
See you next time.